If something like this happens, you are setting yourself up for a ton of liability if someone is injured or killed as a result of a crash. A good plaintiff's lawyer is going to lick their chops, and they're going to dig in, and they're going to dig in deep, and they're going to inquire about all of your training, all of your hiring practices. And if you don't have something in place, they will take full advantage of that, and you may find your insurance runs out very, very quickly. Welcome back, everyone. Craig Steger here today, the farming lawyer. So I want to talk today. I want to follow up on something that I've kind of been talking about in recent videos, both on this channel as well as my other companion channels. If you follow me, you'll notice that I have different channels across YouTube and TikTok primarily. But today I want to talk a little more about the topic of the CDL ag exemption, as it's, I guess, generically known, in that in most states, and let's just, for purpose of my discussion, I'm going to talk about Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, which is where I practice, is generally speaking, if you're going to drive a commercial motor vehicle over a certain size and weight, and especially if it's going to cross state lines, but if it's over a certain size and weight, you have to have a commercial driver's license, generally speaking. There are some exceptions to those rules, things such as firefighters and first responders, some municipalities like snow plow operators and things like that, maybe some exemptions, but probably the most common, and I would almost say controversial one, is the so-called ag exemption, which in generally speaking means that if you are a farmer and you have to use semis or large trucks or commercial motor vehicles as they're defined under the federal regulations for your farming operations, you may be exempt from getting a CDL, and that exemption can apply to both your members of your family as well as employees that work for you, as long as they are hauling for you, not doing for hire work. And I don't know how long these exemptions have been around. I think they've been around for a while. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk a little bit about the origins of that, kind of the rationale for that, the circumstances that kind of present themselves to farmers currently, and how farming has changed, and sort of offer some thoughts that I have about whether what farmers should do, first of all, given the current regulatory state of affairs, but also consider some things that might be worth changing in the future. So first of all, sort of the thing that kind of created this conversation, and I've talked about it a lot in a lot of videos, involved a 17-year-old young man who was driving a farm truck. He was driving a semi with trailer, hauling silage, corn silage. I'm not sure if he was empty or full at the time. I believe he was empty, but I don't know that for sure. And he was driving not far from where I live, and he did not see cars stopping ahead of him to turn. It's a state highway, 55 miles per hour. And the way the story goes, there was a vehicle stopped to turn left across traffic, and then there was another car behind that vehicle who was between that vehicle and the semi, and the car that was in between them, in her rear view mirror, saw this truck bearing down on her and could tell that the semi was not going to stop, and she actually got hit. I think went off to the ditch side, and the semi, I think, I'm not sure how much he slowed down, if at all, but he rear-ended kind of the corner of the vehicle. It was pulling a trailer that was stopped in traffic, and then I think ended up over into the opposing lane and hit more or less head on a pickup truck coming from the other direction. As I understand it, the person that was driving the pickup truck coming from the other direction was injured. I don't know how seriously. I think they were entrapped in their vehicle for a while. And the young man driving the semi was pretty badly injured. He was airlifted. I believe he was ejected from the semi. The cab was basically ripped off the semi. And this young man was driving, as I understand it, as an employee for one of the local dairy farms in our area that, let's say, is family owned, but is a very, very large dairy, one of the largest in the area. milks thousands of cows, lots of acres. I think they have a big rotary milking parlor, um, large dairy. They have a lot of trucks. They go by my place all the time. And this young man was fortunate that he wasn't killed and didn't kill anyone, but was most likely, I think almost undisputably driving under this ag exemption. I don't know anything about this young man's past. He's not from, I'm almost certain, not a member of this farm family. I don't know how long he had been driving. I don't know what kind of training he received. But it kind of sparked some discussion and things that I think people ought to think about, especially farmers and farm families, that I want to kind of give you some things to think about that maybe you can learn from this a little bit. So kind of stepping back a little bit, like where do these ag exemptions come from? And this is just my strongly held guess. I haven't gone back and kind of started to study the history in detail, but when I was a kid, at least, so when I was, let's see, how many years ago is that? 30 some years ago, almost 40, over 40 years ago, I was a kid on a small dairy farm in Iowa, and that was a pretty typical size farm for the Midwest, at least dairy size. I think, more your corn and bean grain farmers in sort of Minnesota and Western Iowa probably were a little larger, but where I grew up, farms are small. Most of your um, harvesting was done locally, tractors and wagons. None of us had trucks. Maybe part of that was we lived in very hilly country and maybe you couldn't get trucks around. I don't know. But we were doing, we were farming 160 to 200 acres, corn and hay, and trucks just weren't part of it. And I don't think there was a lot of trucking in farming at that time, other than, let's say, the milk truck that came in, and that was usually a straight truck. We didn't really have, I don't remember seeing semi milk trucks when I was a kid. But I think the origin is, for especially for grain farmers who needed to haul corn and beans either back to their farm or to the town. It was much quicker to be able to put that the corn and beans onto a truck of some sort and haul it to town rather than pulling it with a tractor and a couple of gravity boxes or something like that. And I think that's kind of where the ag exemption originally came up, because the question is, are we going to require these farmers or their employees to get commercial driver's licenses? And for one reason or another, exceptions were given for them. I'm guessing because of the concern that this might be cost prohibitive for farmers, make it difficult for them to find labor, especially on kind of a seasonal basis. And so for one reason or another, exemptions have been around for a long time with respect to agriculture and farmers. Um, Farming has changed a lot since those exemptions came about, and now it is much more common for farmers to be using trucks. And in fact, I would say one thing that has changed since I was a kid is, back when I was a kid, everyone did their own chopping, haymaking. Now a lot of that's, and manure hauling, right? And a lot of that now, especially in dairy, is custom done by big choppers, big combines, and for good reason. You can get the crop in much more quickly, much more uniformly, and so you have large, um, let's say, custom operations going around doing a lot of it. And those, to my knowledge, have to have commercial driver's licenses. Now, I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, that there are a lot of places that have kind of got around that by having the drivers employed by the farmer while they're doing work for that farmer. I don't know if how much that happens or if that's legal or not, but there are a lot of farms that are big enough and they have their own fleet of equipment. They have a big chopper, they have a big combine, whatever. And so they have their own trucks and they're hauling their own silage, they're hauling their own manure. And what do we do? How do we find drivers for those people, for those farms? And this is the kind of situation that can happen when you're hiring people, especially young people that probably don't have a ton of driving experience in general, much less behind a semi. And the question is, how much training are they receiving? If they're not having to receive training to drive legally, what is the farmer doing? What have they gone through any classes? And that's a really, really important topic. And I think that's really the key takeaway from all this, regardless of whether you agree or not with the ag exemptions. In my experience as a personal injury attorney, as a plaintiff's lawyer that handles these kinds of cases, it is all the more important for farmers to be training drivers, especially those drivers. I think this includes drivers that have CDLs and those that don't. CDL training, because I just went through this, does not teach you how to drive, let's say, a silage truck and get in and off of field approaches, navigating small roads, driving in the fields, driving in and out of farm driveways, things like that. I didn't learn any of that in CDL training. I learned a lot of that just from farming and driving tractors and trailers. Pulling wagons. I didn't really have to drive truck when I was on the farm. But most CDL drivers would not really be able to do that without additional training. So I think farmers need to be training those drivers. And I think they do, because there are lots of good financial reasons to make sure that they know how to do that, so that you're not getting equipment stuck, you're not breaking things, breaking drive shafts and things like that. So there's lots of good reasons why you might train even CDL drivers to operate in that kind of environment. I think you have to take all that and then some when you're hiring non-CDL drivers who may not have any knowledge or experience on how to safely drive an 80,000-pound vehicle, especially one that's got air brakes, limited visibility, increased stopping distances. Maybe you got mud in the tires, all kinds of factors that I think make driving, let's say, farm trucks even more difficult, more dangerous than over the road trucking. I've talked about this in other videos too, is over the road trucking, which I haven't done myself, is not easy, but it tends to occur in environments that are designed for that: truck stops, interstates, large ramps, large warehouse parking lots for trucks to get in and out of. That's not what you're facing on the farm, whether your farm driveway is designed for it or fields. All that, I think, is a level of difficulty for farm driving that you wouldn't have if you're an over the road trucker. That I think in many ways makes it all the more important for farmers to train. I think, first of all, be trained themselves. I would really encourage farmers, if you have commercial motor vehicles in your operation, I think it's really, really important that either you or someone in your employ who's a regular there, has a supervisory position, has gone through the training and gotten their commercial driver's license. So you know how to do things like proper pre-trip inspections, how to inspect your vehicle, how to check your brakes, tires, airlines, all that kind of stuff. I think it's really, really important that someone in the farm itself know and be trained on those things and have the ability to legally drive those things, so that they in turn can train drivers, seasonal drivers, especially young people. I took my commercial driver's license test when I was in my late 40s. I've been driving since I was 15 years old. I've driven lots and lots of miles, driven lots of tractors and equipment and some trucks, lots of trucks and trailers, but never a semi. And there was a lot I had no idea about until I started doing the actual training, the actual trucking classes. And I had that with 30 some years of actual driving experience. When you have someone, let's say they're 17 or 18 years old, they may have only been driving for a couple of years. They don't even have that body of experience. And if they didn't grow up on a farm, they may not have the experience of driving tractors and equipment around the farm, in and out of the fields, maybe, short drives on sort of rural roads to and from the farm and field. If they don't have that, it's especially important for you as the farmer to make sure they know what they're doing and they can operate it safely, both for their sake as well as for other people on the road. And there's also just a really, really good financial reason for it. And this is something I really want to emphasize. Even though it's maybe legal for you to hire a non-CDL driver, it does not excuse you from the duty to make sure that they're trained and skilled. And if you are not taking any kind of reasonable steps to train them, to supervise them, to have policies like no phones, no texting, none of that stuff, you need to have those policies and you need to enforce those policies, because if you don't, and if something like this happens, you are setting yourself up for a ton of liability if someone is injured or killed as a result of a crash. A good plaintiff's lawyer is going to lick their chops, and they're going to dig in, and they're going to dig in deep, and they're going to inquire about all of your training, all of your hiring practices. And if you don't have something in place, they will take full advantage of that, and you may find your insurance runs out very, very quickly. So that's why it's really, really important. If you are a farmer and you either drive trucks yourself or you have employees that do it, it's really, really important that you still take training seriously. And I would say take it even more seriously than if you're hiring CDL drivers, and or if you're hiring a custom operations. That, I think, actually provides you with a decent amount of legal protection in the event that they get into a crash, as long as you have kind of done your due diligence and you're not aware that they have bad reputations or they hire unsafe drivers. That provides you with a fair amount of legal protection in the event that a crash happens. Because if you have a farm, if you have the family farm and you don't have enough insurance, that asset is going to be the most vulnerable thing that you have, and you don't want to jeopardize that because you didn't take the steps necessary to train workers. And I realize this may be difficult. This may add time and expense to farming operations that are already short on time and money, but you really have to do that. If you are going to have any kind of equipment on the road, especially semis, straight trucks, un-CDL licensed drivers, you really, really need to take this seriously, because it's just extremely important, both for the safety of your drivers, safety of the public, as well as your own financial safety and the viability of your farm and your family's lifestyle. So let me see here. I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. A few things I wanted to talk about. I know in talking to farmers that it can be challenging to find drivers, especially CDL licensed drivers, that even want to do the work, much less, they can afford to hire them. Because let's be honest, it is kind of a seasonal thing, or it has ebbs and flows. During the spring season, when you're hauling manure, you may be running 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and then there's a lull. And then when you're chopping hay in the summer, same thing. Maybe you're really busy for 3 or 4 days, and then you have a couple of weeks off. Then you get into the fall and you're doing, chopping corn and then hauling manure. And so, depending on whether it rains, you may be working, you may not be. I understand that. And those are certainly some of the things that, need to take into consideration. But I also would encourage people to get your CDL licenses. Even if you have a day job, whether you're a teacher or whatever the case may be, it's a great skill to have. It's not super expensive to get, and it gives you options. It gives you flexibility to maybe make a little extra money and help out the farmers during the busy times of year when they need extra drivers. So I really want to encourage people, look into it. If you have questions about, what it takes to get your commercial driver's license, let me know. I just went through it. I got my Class A commercial license just a couple of weeks ago. And if I can do it, I think pretty much anyone can do it. So anyway, I'd be curious what people think about that. And I understand that there are going to be people that are going to be upset about that. I'm not necessarily lobbying for greater regulations, but I think some things maybe ought to be considered, such as perhaps raising the age to at least 18 to drive farm trucks without a commercial license. You have to be at least 18 to get your commercial license in the first place. That might be something to look at. I think another thing maybe to be require some sort of training. Maybe it's something short of the CDL, but some sort of training would be good. I'm actually in the process of putting some of that together. I'm going to try to put together some resources, some tools, some videos, and things that farmers can use to train their employees on how to, how to be aware of kind of the big issues that you're going to face doing this kind of work. I'll try to put that together. If people are interested in that, follow my channel, just subscribe, or go into the description and send us an email and get on our email list. I'll be happy to share that with you. Otherwise, find someone that has experience and have them come in and show your drivers at the beginning of every season or when someone new is hired, and record that. Come in and have them do a training and record it, and then save that for your future drivers. You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel, but find someone that can develop a training structure that is suitable to your needs, suitable to the type of equipment you're driving, the distances, the crops you're hauling, the weather that you might encounter, the type of soils, all that kind of stuff that can make a difference. Find someone to tailor a training program for you, record it, and then use it with your employees, and adopt some sensible safety standards, some safety policies. No cell phones, no drinking, obviously, things like that, things that might be kind of obvious, but have them put into a policy and then enforce that, and be willing to not hire someone or let go of someone if they don't meet those basic standards, because the last thing you need is to hire someone because you're desperate and have them get into a crash and severely injure someone, and then setting yourself up for potential significant claim by skilled lawyers. That's the thing you want to try to avoid, and some of these things can hopefully help you avoid that. So yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching my videos. I'll continue to put this stuff out pretty much on a weekly basis. I have some resources coming that I'm really excited to share with you, as well as a new website that'll have a lot of resources on there, because I really am committed to helping and fighting to make farming safer, making trucking safer as much as we can, and then helping families hurt when it's not. That's my that's kind of my operating philosophy, and I do mean that. And so I appreciate the opportunity to help you with that, and I appreciate any feedback that you have, comments or otherwise, about any of this. And so yeah, appreciate everyone for watching, and until next time, everyone, have a good one.